The View really had the tables turned on them when they thought it would make for good television to confront and corner actor Kurt Russell on a comment he made earlier about gun control and the Second Amendment. This happened during Kurt's promotions for his new movie, The Hateful Eight, when Whoopi Goldberg and the rest of the panel fell unusually silent while Kurt calmly dismantled them in front of their audience.
Recently you made some headlines for saying that you felt gun control laws wouldn't deter terrorists. Explain to folks.
Well, you know, these are these things where, first of all, I was in a situation, we do what we call the dog and pony.
Right.
We're out doing the dog and pony selling a picture. And you get sometimes you get what you feel is slightly ambushed by somebody who's really got an agenda. And that's sort of, I think, that's my opinion of what happened to me the other day. The last thing I like to watch is entertainers or actors get political. It's just something I can't stand watching. So having said that, no, I was kind of asked to put it in context somehow with this movie. Mm-hmm. You know, my personal feeling is that there's a big difference between Fantasyland and reality. Fantasyland is what we do. You're either writing something, writing a song, writing a book, doing a movie, doing a television show. That's Fantasyland. And that's where that stuff belongs. In reality, when we're dealing with things like terrorism and whatnot, we're all going to have different opinions on how to do it, and how to deal with it. Yeah. Mine happens to be that I think there's a very strong reason Founding Fathers had for the Second Amendment, and that is that no government ever hasn't had to fight its own people, and its own people hasn't had to fight its own government.
See how Whoopi Goldberg immediately sits up straight when Kurt Russell outright calls it a fantasy that should be relegated to the movies? The comments he's referring to is something he said after the San Bernardino shooting, quote, "If you think gun control is going to change a terrorist's point of view, I think you're out of your mind." By the way, this comment makes a lot more sense in the context of his project at the time. His latest film, The Hateful Eight, was actually set a decade after the American Civil War and touched on a lot of the same themes around gun ownership and the right to self-defense. I actually like the fact that Kurt avoided falling into many of the emotional arguments around fear of an armed populace, especially as you'll see next from Joy Behar. Instead, he shifts their focus on why the Second Amendment exists in the first place, and how we'd be best advised to not live in the delusion that we'll never need it again. Watch him pull the View out of their echo chamber and educate them about history and government.
We had our Civil War. If that Second Amendment hadn't been there, those people would not have had the opportunity to do what they considered was defending their life, their way, their style of living. So I agree with that. I think that's an important part of our existence, and it's basically that simple.
I think that people more object to the excesses of the Second Amendment, not the Second Amendment. It's these
and that's where the debate comes in. I think it's too bad that the debate can't remain kind of civil too, and that's hard to do. It's one of those things that it's like I talked about. Sometimes talking about terrorism. Whatever we do, and we all have our opinion on that too. Whatever we do, we're a little late for the people who've died. And if you know somebody, or you know a child that was maimed in that situation, I got a strong feeling that one's opinion has a tendency to change that. Yeah. So I just leave it open for interpretation by all different people and just say we're all in this together and we're going to hear each other talk.
The dollar is as volatile and devalued as ever, and that means you can no longer sleep easy with an IRA plan that leaves your retirement vulnerable. That's why we've partnered with Birch Gold, who uses a little-known IRS loophole to help you diversify your retirement portfolio with the safest hedge against inflation, precious metals. Get America's most trusted IRA specialists on board by claiming Birch Gold's information kit at zero cost or obligation. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to create a more robust IRA portfolio today. Quote, "We're a little late for the people who've died." That's such a great way to put it. I think Kurt is pointing to a deeper truth here. We see the same news cycle every time a shooting incident happens, people screaming and evolving into their emotions instead of carefully picking apart the right course of action. It's understandable the rush of fear and emotions you'd feel, especially in a news media that's eager to feed off of it. However, riding that wave to question the basic rights guaranteed by the Constitution would be taking it too far. By the way, we cover news stories like this every day, so don't forget to subscribe to Freedom Frontline to stay updated with all of our future content. I was actually reminded of an epic moment between Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan that just refuses to leave my memory. During a segment on CNN back in 2013, Ben literally pulled out the US Constitution on air and gave it to Piers Morgan to read. He went on to give us a memorable tirade that really shells out the civic importance of the Second Amendment.
I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not. The basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense, and it's not about hunting. It is about resistance to government tyranny. That's what the founders said, and that's what the right believes in this country.
Which tyranny are you fearing yourself?
I fear the possibility of a tyranny rising in this country in the next 50 to 100 years. Let me tell you something, Piers. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe didn't fear that is why they are now ashes in Europe. So this kind of leftist revisionist history, where there's never any fear of democracy going usurpacious or tyrannical, is just that. It is fictitious.
This is the kernel of truth you find only when you unclog your mind of all the haziness of emotions and the fear-mongering of the MSM. As Ben Shapiro said and Kurt Russell explained to The View, the conversation should start after the Second Amendment and the right for self-defense in established and agreed upon. People across our history have recognized this fact. In fact, here's what Benjamin Franklin said that I believe sounds as accurate today as it did in the 18th century. Quote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Perhaps we'd all be wiser looking past the modern coddling society. Take a glance at history and you see tyranny and bloodshed. Look to where the future is headed and you'll realize how governments are expanding, usurping our rights, and invading the most private of our lives. The Second Amendment acts as a brick wall holding up our rights, and we won't be guilted or scared into giving it up. I'm glad Kurt Russell didn't bend the knee to a panel of The View that would eagerly use fear and shame to steamroll any rationale for our guaranteed rights.